So I have a mea culpa.
What's that?
I don't think I told you this. I was feeling guilty. I don't know if that's the correct term, but I just remembered that when I grew up, we had cats,
Oh,
Whitey and Blackey.
oh my God. Another, is that racist or is that descriptive?
It's just totally descriptive.
I know. See?
But now I'm thinking,
Nah. First of all, it may have been more racist then than you know, but it was also much more acceptable then. What year did you have these cats? What year?
oh, it's in the mid 60s.
That's what I'm saying. So, first of all, in the mid 60s, black and white cultures were strongly defined.
Welcome to Peter and Phil's Courageous Conversations, a podcast addressing race relations and social issues in hopes that you'll be inspired to do the same. Now, let's begin our conversation with your hosts, Dr. Peter Weinstein and Dr. Phillip Nelson.
Welcome to Peter and Phil's Courageous Conversations. I'm Dr. Peter Weinstein. These conversations are a series of discussions that Dr. Phillip Nelson and myself had during the summer of 2020, shortly after the murder of George Floyd. This episode, which we welcome you to enjoy, is entitled The Meaning of Words. These are authentic conversations in real time. Enjoy and share.
Understanding from a different perspective, or walking in someone else's shoes.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it's going to sound racist, but we called it moccasin training. Basically was new hires had to work in each area of the hospital. Even if you're a doctor, you had to go hang out in the kennels.
Yep.
Probably can't use that term as much as I used to. But it's the walking in other shoes.
You see, that's why we have to have these conversations, because I am dismayed. That's the word. It's amazing. It's amazing the words I went through to get to that word. I went through insulted, assaulted, angry, and then I got to dismayed. Mm-hmm. I am dismayed that you have to worry about racism of a phrase, the potential racist meaning or racist interpretation of a phrase.
Yep.
In the English language.
Yep.
You know, and it kind of goes back to, you can't legislate hearts.
Yep.
You also can't legislate intent or perception. And the attempt to do so squeezes the joy of life out of language to me. My first interpretation of moccasin training, when you first said that, you know, I had just said walk in another man's shoes.
Right.
And then you said we used to call it moccasin training.
Right.
It was clear the similarities and analogies. There was no racial implications at all until you said, well, actually, you said it before you said it. This may sound racist. You prepared me for it. That means that you're culturally aware, you know, and you're culturally sensitive. But now we have to be cultural cowards if we can't say it because someone else may misinterpret or misperceive it. When, in essence, moccasin training is a homage to the stealthiness of the Native American. And if you can learn to walk through a forest quietly in moccasins, that's one of the first skills you have to be a good hunter. You know, it's actually a positive attribute for American Indians. And is there any wonder why so many people hate being politically correct?
And it's becoming harder and harder.
And for those who never even tried, they're just angry.
Right.
For those who never even cared to try, they can't say anything in public. and they become the ignored.
You know, as somebody who speaks publicly as you do, you have to worry about sexist statements. You now have a hypersensitivity to racist statements. I have heard young speakers get into trouble for age-related statements, which is why I make jest of it as an old guard person right now. So we are taking everything and making it so castrated, for lack of a better way to put it, that it's got no color to it. You're going to have to remove everything of any adjectival nature when you say something.
Yep. Almost. Almost.
Takes all the fun out.
It does. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. It takes life out of it. When, you know, and part of it is because once it's out there, you can't bring it back. You can't say that's not what I meant.
You know, it goes back to the black ghost.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't racist.
To the ghost,
I mean,
it might have been.
The racist part is to think that they're only white ghosts.
Yeah, what happens to black people when you haunt a house?
I wonder if we keep our skin color.
It was an online post on one of the websites, I think, you know, make the Uncomfortable website, Uncomfortable Conversations website, about you guys, you know, calling people you guys.
Now, is that Italian or is that Bronx?
Yous guys is more like an Italian New Yorker.
Yeah. So it's both.
Yeah. You know, and even things like those people or you people, I mean, they're not meant in any way, shape, or form. What are we all supposed to say, y'all?
Right.
Then now we're making fun of the South, right?
Right.
It is getting more and more difficult. So I have a mea culpa.
What's that?
I don't think I told you this. I was feeling guilty. I don't know if that's the correct term, but I just remembered that when I grew up, we had cats.
Oh.
Whitey and Blackey.
Oh my God. Another. Is that racist or is that descriptive?
It's just totally descriptive.
I know. See?
But now I'm thinking,
nah. First of all, it may have been more racist then than you know, but it was also much more acceptable then. What year did you have these cats? What year?
Oh, in the mid 60s.
That's what I'm saying. So, first of all, in the mid 60s, black and white cultures were strongly defined. In the mid 60s, a third of our country was overtly segregated, and the rest of our country was covertly segregated. In the mid 60s, you didn't call a black man black. A black man didn't call himself black. I need to figure out just when James Brown came out with "I'm Black and I'm Proud," but it was around the mid 60s when that happened. We were just getting into black pride. Actually, it was probably around the mid 60s. It was the early 60s, but the mid 60s was the transition period where we went from conked hair to afros, where we went from trying to emulate whites to recognizing the strength of African Americans.
1968.
James Brown, "I'm Black and I'm Proud"?
I think so. Hang on just a sec. But yeah, right around then. So.
Okay, then I was right. That's what I thought. Because I had an afro at Mississippi State, and that was in 73, and they don't last that long. But anyway, I've got my periods right. So first of all, it was acceptable to use black and white to describe color. It was so acceptable that there was racism within the black race at that time. In the mid 60s, we bought the propaganda that started with a drop of black blood makes you black. I don't care how white you look. Louis Gates, if we were able to do genetic histories the way he's doing it now, a lot of white folk wouldn't have jobs right now because of the black ancestors that they have. But back then, the only way we knew is if you were up front or you came out darker than you should have if you were white. But the implication was the lighter skin you are, the more civil you are.
Really?
Yes. The implication was the lighter your skin, the smarter you are. Intelligence was linked to the color of your skin. Now, this is the white man's image, and we bought that. We accepted that. We took it and embraced it and put it in our own culture. And so even though I have a white great-great-grandfather and my mother's family, they all can pass for white. As a matter of fact, my mother was the darkest person in her family. One of my aunts told me a story that the rest of them could pass for white, and they did. And when they took the bus to school, blacks had to sit in the back of the bus. And my mother would sit in the back of the bus, and and she had 10 brothers and sisters, and they all sat in the front or wherever they wanted to, until one day they went to school on a sunshiny day. And by the time the bus came back, it was snowing or raining or something. And they lived, and my mother's from Virginia, so they lived in the mountains. They lived in Hot Springs, and it was a half-mile walk up the road to their house. And so my grandmother took their coats and stuff down to the bottom of the road to meet them. And all the 10 children come bounding off the bus. And she's like, well, where's Audrey? And they're like, oh, she's coming. And then my mom gets off the bus a little bit later. She's like, what took you so long? And my mom said, hey, I was at the back of the bus. She's like, well, how come you weren't sitting with them? She said, well, they sit at the front. And then the bus driver said, is she yours? And my grandmother looked white too. She said, yes. And she said, and are they yours? And she said, yes. And she said, well, they got to sit on the back of the bus next time. So my point is that at that time, everybody was designating black, brown, white, mulatto. So it was acceptable then. And I'm not sure if I didn't have a dog named Blackey. I know it's not the first time I've heard that term. And once you put a name on them, if that's what they come to, that's what you call them. You know, and so yes, in today's culture, that's stark that we would even think of that. But if you don't think about it in context, then you set yourself up for guilt that you don't deserve.
So I shouldn't feel guilty that the next cat I got was Siamese.
No, as a matter of fact, that means that you were ahead of your time.
Do you remember the two best-selling magazines in the 60s and 70s that black people read?
Yep, Jet and Ebony.
I wrote them down. Yeah.
My first job was selling Jet and Ebony magazines. And I was 6 years old, and I went up and down the street, and I knocked on the door and asked, would you like to buy a Jet or Ebony magazine? I finally got to my dad's best friend, and he said, what did you say? What did you call that magazine? Say that again. I said, Jet and Ebony. He said, let me call your daddy. And he called my father. He says, VA, you need to teach your son what he's selling. He's out here selling Ebony magazines, and he's calling them Ebony. And he could have just corrected me.
From that standpoint, it's yeah. But the Whitey and the Blackey and just came to mind as I was.
Yeah, well, no, you don't owe an apology for that, but
Thank you for joining us for another courageous conversation. Be sure to follow us and check back next week for more.